Last month, Sarah Whitaker was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for arson, harassment, and identity theft. I still wake up some nights expecting another betrayal. She wasn't just my sister, she was my best friend once, when I flew back to the U.S. to care for my comatose daughter. I walked into a nightmare. Sarah had stolen everything, my house, my name, even Ella's trust fund. That was only the beginning. My sister Sarah always had a dark streak. I remember being 10 and her 12, sneaking into Dad's garage and lighting his firecrackers for fun. She laughed as they exploded, but when smoke filled the air, she ran. When our parents came home, she cried on cue and blamed me. I was grounded for a week. That lie was my first taste of Sarah's power, the way she could twist reality and still smile sweetly. In high school, Sarah stole my journal and read it aloud during a party. Everyone laughed at my dreams and fears. I locked myself in the bathroom, sobbing while she basked in the spotlight. When I confronted her later, she shrugged, saying, "It's just words." Mom told me to stop overreacting. That night, I ripped the pages out and buried them. I started keeping secrets even from myself, especially when it came to trusting Sarah. After Ella's accident overseas, I left everything behind to get her treatment. Sarah offered to watch my house and handle my affairs. I was too grateful to question it. But when I returned, the locks were changed, and my name wasn't on the deed anymore. Police said it was a civil matter. Mark, my old friend in investigations, warned me quietly she forged more than signatures. Nat, she's been planning this. That's when the fear began. I tried to retrieve documents from the bank, but Sarah had already switched the accounts. My name was scrubbed. The manager looked at me like I was the scammer. "Your sister's the primary," he said. Mark told me Jake Caldwell, Sarah's boyfriend with a criminal record, was listed as my power of attorney. My stomach dropped. My own sister was using a felon to lock me out of my life, but who would believe me without proof? When I confronted Sarah outside the courthouse, she smiled like we were discussing brunch. "You abandoned your life, Natalie," she said sweetly. I just filled the void. I wanted to scream, but Mark gripped my arm. "Too many witnesses." The red herring came fast. Jake showed me papers Sarah supposedly signed giving me control again. They were fake. My lawyer confirmed it. Sarah was buying time, sowing confusion, twisting hope into another weapon. I felt trapped. I installed surveillance at Elled's rehab center. After strange calls came through pretending to be me, a nurse flagged a visitor who fit Sarah's bill but wore a wig and sunglasses. The footage was grainy, inconclusive. Then Ella's trust fund started shrinking. Weekly transfers to an unknown account. Jake's name surfaced again. I confronted him, but he denied everything, claiming he left Sarah months ago. Another red herring. Meanwhile, Ella's condition worsened. I couldn't keep up. At Sarah's arraignment, I brought a folder of forged documents, surveillance clips, and Elled's medical records, proof of financial abuse. As I spoke, Sarah locked eyes with me, her smirk gone. The judge demanded a recess. I turned to Mark, whispering she didn't expect me to fight. For the first time, I saw fear in her. But that victory was fleeting. Jake vanished, and the trust fund was nearly empty. I'd exposed her, but the damage was deep. Sarah's lawyer played the insanity card, diagnosed sociopath, emotionally unstable, unfit for prison. My hands shook as I read the psychiatric report aloud, proof she's manipulated it to avoid consequences. Mark stood beside me, steady and silent. When I finished, the room was dead quiet. I whispered to Sarah, "You're not crazy, just cruel." Her eyes didn't blink. That's when I realized this wasn't about justice. It was about exposing the monster in daylight and surviving it. After court, I found a charred photo of me and Ella taped to my car. Sarah was in custody, so someone else did it. Jake and my heart raced. I called the rehab center. Ella was safe but shaken. Mark warned me to stay under police radar. I moved into a hotel that night. I dreamed of Sarah lighting matches, whispering, "She deserves it." I woke up screaming the war wasn't over. It had just gone underground. Jake finally called. Blocked number, distorted voice. "You think locking her up ends it?" he said. "She gave me everything, and I'm not done." I recorded the call. Police traced it to a burner phone dump near my old house. Mark urged me to push the door harder. "If he's her fallback, you need him nailed too." I felt the weight of every sleepless night, every ounce of rage. It was time to go public. At a televised press conference, I laid it all bare: Sarah's manipulation, Jake's threats, and the stolen money. Reporters gasped. The DA announced an open investigation into Jake Caldwell. Sarah, watching from prison, lost her leverage. For the first time in years, I felt the tide shift. But Ella still called in to speak, her trust shattered as cameras flashed. I promised aloud I won't stop until she's safe again. The fight wasn't for revenge, it was for Ella. I thought Jake had fled, but then he sent me a package. Inside, Ella's locket, blood-stained, with a flash drive taped to it. My fingers trembled as I plugged it in. Video clip: Sarah recording herself dictating fake documents, mocking my voice, signing in my name. She didn't care who saw it. "Natalie's too emotional," she said. "No one listens to hysterics." My stomach turned. This wasn't desperation, it was pride. She wanted me to see. Mark ran the files through forensic software. They were authentic. Every clip time-stamped, traced back to Sarah's home server. But the biggest shock came last: a folder labeled insurance. It held audio of Jake threatening to kill me unless Sarah paid him. So she's turned on him too. My head spun. The sociopath had double-crossed her own monster. I called the DA immediately. "You've got everything now," I said. "So what are you going to do?" The DA filed new charges against Sarah: conspiracy, coercion, tampering. The media erupted. Public sympathy swung my way. But then came the backlash. Online trolls flooded my inbox, accusing me of exploiting mental illness, blaming me for Ellen's accident, Sarah's old friends posted photos from our childhood, painting her as misunderstood. I nearly deleted everything. Mark stepped in, ranging cybercustodian and emotional support. She thrives on chaos. He reminded me, don't let her win now. Then Elle woke up. Her voice was weak, but her first word was Mom. Tears blurred my vision. She remembered nothing after the crash, but when I showed her Sarah's photo she turned away. Don't let her near me, she whispered. That memory was buried. But Ra, I promised, never again. Her fear was real, and so was mine. I updated every security measure, hired a full-time nurse. Ella's voice became my battle cry. We weren't broken. A court psychologist revealed Sarah's personality disorder wasn't just diagnosed, it was cultivated. Her journals, recovered by police, described training herself to lie without guilt. She mimicked emotions, studied empathy like homework. I read pages aloud in court. If I smile, they believe me. The courtroom fell silent. I glanced at Ella, who gripped my hand tighter. Sarah wasn't misunderstood, she was manufactured. My fear turned to steel. I was done surviving, I was taking her down. Jake turned witness in exchange for a plea deal. His testimony sealed the case. He admitted to falsifying bank transfers and helping Sarah impersonate me. He said she used guilt and sex like tools. She scared me, he said on record. Not with fists, with her smile. That line made headlines. Sarah's manipulations weren't just twisted, they were weaponized. When the verdict came, it was unanimous, guilty on all counts. But for me, justice still felt unfinished. A sealed envelope arrived from Sarah's prison cell. Inside, a photo of us as kids, smiling at a picnic. On the back, you never really knew me. I stared at it for hours. Was it a taunt, a goodbye? Mark urged me to toss it. But I kept it locked away, not as a keepsake but a warning. People like Sarah don't disappear, they wait watching. That truth chilled me more than her conviction ever could. Mark found out the rehab center was under investigation. Sarah had bribed one nurse to keep Ella sedated longer. My blood ran cold. That delay might cost Ella her speech. The nurse confessed, weeping. I pressed charges. Ella watched silently, clutching her new journal. Write what you can't say, I told her. She nodded. Her first page said, trust Mom. I broke down sobbing. In that moment, I knew we weren't victims anymore. We were rebuilding, word by word. Ella started physical therapy. Timid and slow, one afternoon, she handed me a drawing, two stick figures holding hands, labeled me and Mom. Tears welled up. Her therapist whispered, that's progress we don't see on charts. Meanwhile, Sarah's sentence was extended for the rehab bribery. Jake tried to recant, but the DA blocked it. I smiled, not because it was over, but because Ella had smiled first. That tiny curve of her lips meant everything. Jake sent another letter from prison, this one begging forgiveness. He claimed Sarah had threatened his sister to keep him loyal. I was a pawn, he wrote. I'm sorry, I didn't reply. Forgiveness wasn't the point, boundaries were. I gave the letter to Mark for the record. Letting Jake's regret rot in silence felt better than any revenge. It wasn't mercy, it was control. My life wasn't his redemption story, it was finally mine again. Ella's speech therapist invited us to a support group for trauma survivors. At first, we just listened. Then one night, Ella scribbled on her notepad, can I talk? I nodded. She stood trembling and whispered, my aunt heard us. Gasps filled the room. I hugged her tight. That moment changed everything. She wasn't just healing, she was owning her story. Sarah's silence wouldn't erase what she did. Ella was learning to rewrite pain into power. I was invited to speak at a women's advocacy panel. I almost declined. Exposing trauma again felt raw, but Ella surprised me, placing her journal in my lap. Read page 3, she said. It said, Mom is my superhero. I choked up. That night, I stood under harsh lights and spoke the truth. About gaslighting, theft, fear and resilience. Afterward, strangers hugged me, survivors shared their stories. The silence Sarah weaponized, I'd turned it into a rallying cry. Mark showed me a sealed box labeled for Natalie from the evidence room. Inside were items Sarah had taken: Ella's baby bracelet, my college ring, our mom's brooch. I held each piece like an old wound scabbed over. She kept them all, Mark whispered. Not to pawn, to possess, proof of control. I photographed everything, then locked them away. We'd get new keepsakes ones Sarah never touched, symbols not of pain but of survival. Ella began sleeping through the night again. No more nightmares, no whispered fears. We planted a garden together behind the rehab center, roses, like the ones my mother used to grow. Each bloom felt like a step forward. When Ella dug the first hole, she said, we bury what hurt, right? I nodded. And we grow something better. That garden wasn't just soil and petals, it was proof. We were still standing, still blooming. I returned to court one last time, this time to finalize a restraining order for life. Sarah didn't appear. Her lawyer submitted a statement: she wishes no further contact. That didn't mean peace, it meant boundaries, legal, permanent. As I left the courthouse, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. No more looking over my shoulder. Sarah was no longer a storm. I had learned how to build a roof. And I was never letting it leak again. Ella asked if she could change her last name. I want it to be ours. Just us, she said. My breath caught. She no longer wanted Whitaker, Sarah's shadow. We filed the paperwork. Ella Ray Morgan, new name, new beginning. That night, she wrote in her journal, I get to choose, and she did. I tucked her in, whispering, you're safe now. Her reply, we both are. The chains were broken. We weren't just surviving, we were free. Months later, we returned to the garden, now bursting with color. Ella placed a small sign by the roses. This is where we started over. She smiled, the scar on her cheek barely visible now. Mark joined us, bringing lemonade. You built something real, he said. I nodded. No more courtrooms, no more fear, just healing one petal at a time. As we sat beneath the sun, I finally believed we were going to be okay. I kept the photo Sarah sent me in a locked drawer, not to forgive but to remember. Her smile in that snapshot wasn't warmth, it was a warning. I showed it to Ella once. That's the old story. She said we don't live there anymore. Her words stuck. We weren't erasing the past. We were naming it, boxing it, and walking away. Sometimes survival isn't about escape, it's about reclaiming space, and we'd done just that. Ella asked why people hurt each other. I paused, then said, some people choose power over love. But we don't, she nodded slowly. That night she added a page to her journal, love is louder. I taped it to our fridge. Every time I read those words, I breathe a little easier. Not because the pain's gone but because it didn't win. We chose to speak, to stand, to love loudly. That's what healing sounds like. Sarah remains in prison. Denied parole after a psychiatric review confirmed her manipulative patterns. Jake's sentence stands. His appeals rejected. Their names rarely cross my mind now. The world finally sees them for who they are. At Ella's school, I was invited to speak during Safety Week, our story now a tool for education. Afterward, a young girl whispered, I told my mom about my uncle. My chest tightened. Maybe this pain had purpose. Maybe survival spreads. Ella and I moved to a new town, smaller, quieter. We painted her room yellow and planted roses in the front yard. Every morning, we say 3 things we're grateful for. Hers rarely change, you books, breakfast. I smile every time. I joined a local group for survivors turn advocates. We meet monthly, share, support, strategize. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And as I watch Ella laugh again, unguarded and bright, I know one thing for sure: we made it.